Hiya and welcome. I am Sabrina, and this is Every 7 Years, a podcast inspired by the fact that every 7 years you essentially have a new body. And this body has been created by you, by your habits, your choices, your environment, your lifestyle. Like nature, you are constantly cycling and rebuilding. And just like a tree requires ample water and nutrients, fresh air and sunlight, you too require constant attention and proper care. But in today's society, we've become really distracted and very good at ignoring the cues our body shows us. But your sensitivity is a superpower. So if you are curious about how to become more of your favorite you, join me here every week for deep dives intended to inspire you to uncover the wisdom within us all so that you can live with more ease, confidence, and joy. Hello, everybody. I hope that you've had an amazing week. Since we last spoke, I have been doing a lot of contemplating and relaxing and meditating, which is interesting for me because this is all new. And I think it shows. I'm definitely tanned. But I also feel like, I don't know if it's doing the Anastasia program, learning a little bit more about my micro expressions, doing more massage, having more detox practices in my life as I'm trying to heal my cellulite. Maybe I'm like eating a little bit better and working out a little bit more. I have just been living a retirement life a little bit. Lots of time in the morning sun. Lots of amazing quality sleep, falling asleep at 8:45 with no shame, and not really a whole lot of obligations other than the ones I have that I have created myself and that I love to do. What else? Our home gym is nearing completion. So exciting. We have Rogue fitness equipment, an actual barbell with plates, which I have never owned before. I've actually never used one before. I've never even grabbed a barbell or used weights in that way. So that's going to be really exciting. Mike and I also picked up some pretty affordable rubber mats that kind of click together on our concrete garage floor to make it feel a little more clean and cute and also cushy and like you want to be barefoot on it. We already have lots of dumbbells, and then the piece of equipment we got from Rogue Fitness collapses flat against the wall or folds out so that you can have the rack against it and any accessories added onto it. Anyways, very excited to go down that weightlifting journey, especially with Mike, because we've never worked out together before. And he is on an amazing kick right now of going for runs and doing a morning routine between the hours of 6 and 7 a.m., which is really freaking impressive and awesome. And I've done it with him one day this week. I'm intended to today. And apparently he said he tried to wake me up and I was just a rock. So it didn't happen today, but that's all right. The point is, I am leaning into and learning that I am being productive with this time of self-study and rest and tranquility. And I haven't been even searching for a reason to not feel lazy during this time. And I haven't, truly. I honestly haven't, even though that is a tendency of the past for me. If anything, I have been reading things and learning things and hearing things that validate this time for me and make me feel all the more like this is the intention of this time. And it's also been really trippy to have a 7-year to the month moment of reflection on having a summer off that changed my life and sparked all of this for me, which if you've listened to the podcast before from the beginning, you know my root origin story and what happened that summer of 2017 that threw my life on this new path. And it's so weird, you guys, 7 years later to be in a very similar summer where I don't have a lot of work obligations, where professionally there's not a lot grasping at me. And I'm afforded the luxury of time with myself to read, to move, to walk and take care of myself, to cook meals, to clean the house, to garden. I've been spending hours in the garden every day, at least an hour or two. I'm outside in the gardens. Then I'm spending at least another hour outside walking with Piper or going on a run with Mike if I ever wake up and make it. And we've also been doing a lot of work outside. Something I don't really give credit to is the amount of work we put into our home projects, one of which has been seriously digging a literal moat trench around our sauna so that we can have a flagstone patio coming out of the door, because right now it's like a little makeshift single step deck that leads to bark chips, and you can't really go barefoot from the house to the sauna and back comfortably. So we have actually dug like 5 feet down into the earth and then 5 feet wide, removed all of the rocks and dirt that is there, and then built up a road on top of it so that we have a new roadway in our backyard kind of around the sauna. And then we have a flat area in front of the sauna so that eventually we can put some nice flagstone down there. It's full on home ownership, you guys. It's 4 years into owning this home. And while inside is pretty well done, even though we still do tweaks like putting up our TV mount and ledge and moving furniture around, this is the first month that this couch has been ever in this position in 4 years. So there's so much that goes on that I don't really even post about or give credit to because it's not professional. It's not something I'm making money at. But also, yeah, it frickin' is. Every hour of sweat equity that we put into this house, putting the flagstone down, making a little path, gardening, tending to the plants, doing landscaping. We're constantly tweaking things. Redoing our driveway is coming up. That is making money because it's asset. This house becomes more and more valuable. And I've definitely seen evidence that real estate investments are good ones. So it's interesting that as I've been reframing my relationship with money and where it comes from and what I have to do to feel like I'm earning, I don't know, that's just all really transformed. So I want to talk a little bit about what I credit this transformation to. It's a 4-letter word and it's yoga. And I also want to talk about some interesting connections I've made. And what sprung all of this about was having time off. Once again, like I did 7 years ago, having time to self-reflect, to sit in the sun and meditate, and to read books has changed my mind. And I feel like I've entered another month summer warp zone of reading and writing and self-development work that I didn't see coming. I've been able to learn a lot in the last while about worry, about what it means to actually live in abundance and be open to miracles. It's interesting that a month or two ago, I spoke out loud saying to Mike and myself that this time was for yoga. And what is very interesting is that you have to let go of expectations, which is one of the goals of yoga in order to reach enlightenment. But in doing so, I've realized that my practice has been in practice even when I haven't known I've been in practice. So as a yoga teacher, the last couple weeks, I've had a lot of classes get canceled. I'm teaching at a new studio. There's not a lot of viewership yet on the space. So unless we meet a minimum, the class gets canceled. And that has happened many times. So while I have been practicing yoga and in practice with asana and breathwork and in my teacher state, I feel like the real yoga I was meant to practice has been all of the other sides of yoga. The sides that you maybe don't hear about. The parts of yoga that have to do with the lifestyle and the mental aspects, nothing to do with the physical movement practice or the breathwork practice. And letting go of expectation of where this comes from or what practice means, how I was even able to come to all of this and what yoga is and why I want to talk about this today is from something outside of yoga altogether. That's what I find so beautiful about this journey of going on the self journey, is that the things that you hear somewhere else or the things that you read in one book might have such a connection to you with something else that you've been studying or thinking about. And I love allowing that to be. And so in this moment and time where I have the luxury of time off, and for some reason I'm not worrying with this time, which I'm going to get to. Worry is huge in this episode. I have been reading a lot of books outside. Feed me grapes. Sounds like so luxurious. And it is. And I'm trying to be totally okay with that. I'm so happy and living my dream. And like, this is what I wanted. So I'm just relishing in it and experimenting with what that feels like and what comes of it. And let me tell you, the results so far are pretty good. So I digress like I do a million times. I picked up a book the other day that I first read when this journey all kicked off for me 7 years ago. And I didn't even make that connection to that being the summer that I first read this book, but I picked up The Rules Do Not Apply by Ariel Levy off my bookshelf. It's been sitting ever since we put up our new cute little mantle TV shelf and redid our living room. I pulled that book out for some reason because I loved the colors of it. They're vibrant pink and red, and I wanted a pop of color on the bookshelf. And so that's what I chose. And it's been looking at me for weeks now. And the other day, my class was canceled. My yoga class was canceled. And so I grabbed that book, and in the 3 hours that I would have otherwise been preparing, driving to class, teaching the class, coming home, I read that book cover to cover. And it had a message for me, probably more than the message or learning that I would have received had I had class, gone, and taught yoga. That would be, in my righteous mind, the practice. But the real practice was reading this book, and specifically this quotation. Nature starts many more projects than she is ever able to finish. I feel like so many of us, including me, can relate so hard to this. So many of us feel guilty when we aren't following through on every little thing we thought we had to do that day, or we said we were going to do, or what we ought to do, or when we feel like we aren't doing enough, or accomplishing enough, or being enough, or producing enough. But like stated in the book, think of how many pine cones are left on the forest floor every single year that simply become mulch. To be a woman, to be a human, is to be a creator, a constant vessel for creations. And I think it's beautiful to have grace around the fact that sometimes we don't finish everything we started. Some seeds stick, others were simply necessary cutting room floor entities that were required as part of this creation process. You keep going. You keep feeding these ideas and creations, and eventually, in a couple weeks or months or years, you'll start to see some sprout. To create a beautiful garden, you have to sow dozens more seeds than ever come to bloom. And why I bring this up is because it is not the norm for me to feel this way. And when I read that, it really hit me and made me just let go of any expectation on myself that, once again, I need to be doing anything with this time other than what I'm doing, which is the practice, the real work. Maybe in going or thinking I need to make everything a professional pursuit or a money-making endeavor is avoiding the real work I'm meant to be doing right now. Maybe my work is reading that book the other day. Maybe my work is seeing a post of crickets slowed down and hearing that their chirps are this choir-like orchestra of 4 harmonics, and being so inspired by that I found a really cool MIDI plugin for GarageBand. And so yesterday I played for 3 hours with this microphone in GarageBand, using my voice to control instruments to make a song that I was inspired to make when I heard these crickets. Like, that's so beautiful. And there would be no project that would have just come my way that would have asked me to do that yesterday. I'm trusting more and more to do these things that I just feel compelled to do when I am my true self, when I am without worry and fear and expectation and judgment. 7 years ago, when I faced my true self, it was so unknown and terrifying that I had to almost throw everything in my life away in order to start chasing it. And now I am 7 years in, and I feel like when I am in this exact same environment with time and space, and I face my true self, I'm comfortable with her. And we have fun and get into cool shit that I'm interested in, that my child self would love to do. With this time, I am creating from a really calm and centered and grounded place. Whereas 7 years ago, I was this woman, rather girl, not yet a woman. I was a girl who didn't know herself. And now I do feel like a woman. I do, it sounds funny to say, but it's good to be here. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me. But so anyways, that's probably the most perfect preface to this episode that I can think of on the practice, on yoga, and on some cool connections that I've been making lately with things that I've heard. And as always, throwing in random anecdotes from my life and cool connections that I have made lately that you might be interested in too. And I also leave this episode on a really amazing quote that is like, so every 7 years. So today, I wanted to give a little bit of a mixed bag and a deep dive into the non-asana and the non-pranayama, the non-movement poses, the non-breathwork side of yoga, both in relation to some things that I'm learning about now and to help those of you who are on this path and keep getting stuck and they just can't figure things out for themselves. These are principles that have shaped me, that I am fascinated by, and that continue to rule my life. A lot of the times we think of yoga as just the movement and the breath work, but yoga is the nature of self. It is understanding how to achieve pure consciousness and liberation. Today, I want to explore the Kriyas, which are essentially the purification rituals and practices that prepare the mind and body to be purified. Essentially, they're detoxes that you can do, detox rituals and practices, which I am all the more interested in right now as I figure out how to heal my cellulite and detox my body from within. I'm going to talk about the 8 limbs of yoga, which is Ashtanga yoga. I want to talk about the niyamas, the observances. I want to talk about things like withdrawal of the senses, concentration, meditation, absorption, and some really fascinating connections and things I've heard lately that I've made to alchemy and Kabbalah. So to brush up on this in my time of being contemplative and having the luxury to sit in the sun and read, I decided to also pick up another book, which was the Yoga Sutras. I had to read the Yoga Sutras and study them back in 2018 when I completed my yoga teacher and breathwork training. And these teachings and principles date back 2,000 years ago, put together by someone named Patanjali. And for those who are curious about yoga or understanding it a little bit deeper, it's a fantastic read. That is a good summary. It's not too long. It's definitely still a yogic textbook, so it can be a little bit dry. So maybe just listen to this episode and you'll get the gist of the Yoga Sutras. So to begin, you have to understand that yoga is all about the nature of the mind. It recognizes that the mind has all of these different emotional states: distracted, concentrated, calm, frustrated, etc. And yoga, or the goal of yoga, is the cessation, the stopping of all of these fluctuations of the mind. In Sanskrit, the word for this like monkey brain, for this just like overthinking, overanalyzing, is vritti or chitta. Chitta is very easy to remember because it's like mind chatter. Your mind chatter is your chitta. So the obstacles then, simplified in yoga to practice in order to achieve this control of your mind, to reach tranquility, are the obstacles of ignorance, the obstacle of the ego, the obstacle of attachment, aversion, and fear of death. And the means through which you can learn to control the mind are through practice, which I'll go into. There's lots to do with practice, and detachment. It's considered that practice needs to be long-term and consistent, and detachment will then come as a byproduct of practice. It's almost a chicken and egg situation where which one comes first? In my opinion, the detachment comes as a result of the practice and getting proof that the practice works. And also with lots of contemplation. So practice. What does it mean to practice yoga. In Sanskrit, practice is referred to as sadhana, and practice can be done all kinds of ways. One way is through the Kriyas, through consistent self-discipline, through self-study, and through devotion. Practice can also be achieved through the 8 limbs of yoga, which is Ashtanga yoga, which involve ethical restraints, the yamas, non-violence, ahimsa, truthfulness, satya, non-stealing, asteya, celibacy or moderation, brahmacharya, and non-possessiveness, aparigraha. Practice can also look like the niyamas, which are the observances of contemplation, observances of purity, of contentment, of self-discipline, of self-study, and of surrender to a higher power. Practice can also be postures, asanas. This is what we usually think of when we think of yoga. We think of all these cool, fun poses. This practice is almost purely physical. Then we get into pranayama, or breath control, aka breathwork. Another practice is withdrawing the senses in order to go inward. And then the final of the 8 limbs of Ashtanga yoga are dharana, which is concentration, the focusing of the mind on a single point. Number 7 is dhyana, which is meditation, which is a little different than concentration. Meditation is more sustained concentration and focus. And lastly, samadhi, which is absorption, which relates to merging with the object of meditation, leading to a state of bliss. And hopefully self-realization, which is always the goal of yoga, is to recognize the Purusha, which is the true self, the eternal, unchanging, static spirit of you. So it is believed that with practice, pure consciousness can then begin to be experienced without judgments, without thoughts or chatter, without expectations. And when you can finally reach this pure consciousness, this state of Purusha, that is when you get vibhuti, which means accomplishments, which relates to supernatural powers. Not my words. The Yoga Sutras claim that supernormal powers result from intense concentration and meditation, and that these powers can include knowledge of past lives, mind reading, invisibility, etc., which allegedly in and of themselves are a test. In the Yoga Sutras, it says that these powers can become dangerous distractions on our path to self-realization. So it's almost like every time you level up, you get a new set of challenges in order to get to the next level. So maybe as you learn to find tranquility with your life and not control or worry about anything and have better reactions to everything, it's like, okay, you've passed that test. Now that you know the mental state of someone else, how are you going to react? Now that you know the mental state of all things, how are you going to react? What are you going to do now? Your challenges just get upgraded as you evolve spiritually. So never think that you won't deal with any issues if you are evolved enough. They'll just become more profound issues to overcome. So the idea, the ultimate goal of yoga then is kaivalya, which is Sanskrit for liberation. Liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth, known as samsara. And this has to involve being totally aware of the nature of the self, of the Purusha, realizing the true self as totally distinct and different from the mind and body, the Prakriti. So lots of Sanskrit words, but I hope you guys are following along or interested so far. So it is then the idea that through discriminative knowledge, through this self-study, one can transcend the qualities of nature in our material world and realize the self, the Purusha, which in yoga is a fundamental concept. Purusha is pure consciousness. Purusha is often translated as spirit or soul, and it is considered eternal and static and unchanging. It is the true essence of an individual, totally distinct from the body and the mind, and totally separate and distinct from all physical phenomenon, everything on earth. Purusha is the consciousness that observes and experiences the world. And while each individual has their own Purusha, It is identical in nature to the universal Purusha, but simply experienced from different points of view. Experienced through everyone's individual perspective and through their unique mind-body complex, which I know I talked in a past episode about this idea that we are all simply plunked. Maybe we are all one consciousness, and we're just simply plunked in different spaces, times, bodies, families, situations, which gives me a lot of empathy for all humans. It makes me feel closer to others when I think about the fact that if I were simply the same consciousness plunked into their body, their circumstance, their place, their time, I probably would feel and think the same things that they do. And maybe that's the challenge, is to overcome this vritti, this chitta, this idea that there is one way, that there is an expectation that it should be this way or it must be that. Maybe we are really all the same. And we would react just like how that person would react if we had their exact mind-body complex and perspective. So enough theorizing, back on track to what the Yoga Sutras and yoga actually does explain. So this Purusha is timeless and unchanging, unlike the body and the mind, which are subject to time and age and growth and decay. The idea is that our spirit, our Purusha, remains constant. The idea is that the true self is a witnessing entity. Our true self is this silent observer or witness to all experiences and activities of the mind and the body. Purusha does not engage in actions, but simply observes. And this is so me right now. Full-time observationalist, full-time gardener, full-time walking meditations, full-time cooking and cleaning. And I feel like I am my Purusha right now. I feel like I really am my true self, observing every day what is going to come my way, what I'm interacting with, and trying to do everything with a lot more care and certainty. And yeah, so this true Purusha self, all experiences and knowledge are illuminated by the presence of Purusha. So if Purusha is pure consciousness, it is then the source of awareness and perception. All experiences and knowledge are illuminated by the presence of Purusha, the true self. The true self, distinct from Prakriti. Prakriti is material stuff. It is material reality comprising physical and mental phenomenon, including the body, the senses, the mind, and the intellect. Prakriti is primordial matter, encompassing all that is physical and mental. And Prakriti is composed of three qualities: balance and harmony, activity and passion, and inertia and darkness. Prakriti evolves these three things into the manifest world, including the elements, the mind, the ego, and intellect. Where Purusha is spirit, Prakriti is dynamic and ever-changing, whereas Purusha is static and spirit. So in a nutshell, self-realization is a big part of yoga, where the ultimate goal is to realize the true nature of the self, is to realize the Purusha. This realization is what leads to liberation. Liberation from the cycle of life and death, which will then end our suffering. That, in a nutshell, is how simple it aims to be. The goal is to end suffering through realizing the self, through not fearing death, through liberating yourself from this cycle in order to stop this cycle of suffering. And when I think about this for myself, it's really cool to feel like I'm getting there, where I find it hard to suffer. As I even contemplate my own baby girl dog's passing one day, I can find ways to let that story be beautiful, as I believe that her soul will be back and that our love is eternal. And I haven't always been this way. To contemplate death when I was younger would have made me cry. Literally thinking of my parents passing, or a grandparent or a friend or a family member, was altogether too much and overwhelming, and I would start crying profusely because I was scared. I was terrified and I was worried. I had a fear of death because I had no belief. Now I'm not terrified at all. My beliefs allow me the strength to face everything that I will in my lifetime. My beliefs allow me strength in light of all I will face. I believe in everyone's Purusha. I believe everyone has this true self and that it is eternal. And if I believe that, then I know that it doesn't go away. I know that it is unchanging. And I know that that spirit remains. It is simply without its Prakriti, its material vessel. So the practice of yoga aims to disentangle the true self, the Purusha, from the Prakriti, from the mind and body, in order to become liberated. So Prakriti, nature, material, mind, body, evolving. Purusha, spirit, ever-living, unchanging, static. By all means, the recognition in and of itself of the Purusha guides your yogic path because it abolishes ignorance, which misidentifies the self as the body and the mind and the ego. It involves meditation to quiet the mind and the senses, the Prakriti stuff, allowing you to experience the presence of your consciousness, of your pure true self without the judgments and the attachments and the expectations. So then it requires detachment, detaching from the external world, the distractions of the mind, the distractions of the world, so that you can focus on your inner reality of true self, consciousness. It requires yamas and niyamas, which are those ethical conducts. And it needs all of this in a very consistent, sustained way. In order to discriminate knowledge that clearly distinguishes between Purusha and Prakriti, you need long-term practice and detachment. So how do we practice? If it isn't just doing a sun salutation and doing some breath work, what is practice? Let's refresh ourselves on what yoga practice can look like. Yoga can be practicing the Kriyas, which are purifications for the mind and the body. Yoga can look like practicing ethical restraints, non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, moderation, and non-possessiveness. Yoga can look like practicing observances of purity, of contentment, of self-study, and of devotion. It can look like practicing the asanas, the physical movements. It can look like pranayama, the breath work and breath control to stabilize the mind. It can look like the withdrawal of senses to go inward. It can look like meditation. It can look like concentration. And it can look like absorption, the merging of the object of your meditation. So if you were to ask me again what I've been doing with this time, I would say I have been practicing yoga. I've been a real good yogi. And ironically, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I've actually spoken out loud of all things. Over the last month or two, I've been just saying, this is my time to practice yoga. This is my time for yoga. And even though my yoga classes have been canceled, I feel like it's been challenging me to practice the things that I maybe avoid, because my asanas and my breath work, I'm on point with. I have to be for my work. It's the Kriyas, it's the observances, it's the meditation that I sometimes fall away from a little bit. And so I think it's beautiful that during this time where I knew I was devoted to my yoga practice, I think it's cool that it showed me what I needed to practice most, which was this downtime with self, which was self-study. So as you guys know, because I'm on a personal cellulite healing journey, this is also all the more interesting to me because I think the Kriyas, the detoxification practices for the body and the mind, might be something that will help me throughout this time. I feel called to the Kriyas for a reason. So I wanted to cover what some of these practices are in case you want to bring them into your life to detox your body and mind if you feel like you've been neglecting that part of yoga. Because for me, the mind stuff, the movement, the breath, that's become quite second nature. That's become quite ingrained in my daily life. The purification rituals, not necessarily becoming part of my daily life yet. And so maybe that's what I am meant to observe and absorb at this time. So Kriya Yoga, as described in the Yoga Sutras, is a path of spiritual practices that encompass three main components. Tapas, which is self-discipline or austerity. Great word, austerity. Svadhyaya, which is self-study or the study of sacred texts, which we've touched on before. And then surrender or devotion, also touched on before. So the main thing I really want to focus on here is the tapas, the self-discipline, the austerity practices. So tapas refers to these disciplined practices that help purify the body and the mind, creating a foundation for spiritual growth. And the Kriyas involve discipline. Mental discipline, physical discipline, and emotional discipline. Kriyas can also refer to a set of practices that are better known as shatkarma, which are known in traditional hatha yoga as a few purification practices and rituals designed to cleanse and prepare the body and the mind for deeper self-understanding and study. So to cover some of these ancient physical practices, it would involve tongue scraping, which is the removal of toxins that expel overnight and find their way onto our tongues. So removing those toxins with a copper tongue scraper. If you need a good one, I sell amazing ones through Healer, HEELR.ca, and they come in a really cute little cotton satchel. Another physical practice is the use of a neti pot, nasal cleansing, to purify the sinuses and the pathway for breathing, typically using a saline solution. I bought a Yeti pot years ago, don't know where it went, haven't done any since, so maybe that's something I'll end up bringing back into my life as a beautiful Kriya. Dauti is another one. This is a little extreme, not something that I plan to partake in, but maybe I'm doing it in my own way with diatomaceous earth. This is the cleansing of your digestive tract, which usually in old times would include techniques like drinking salt water to vomit or having other methods to cleanse the stomach and intestines like an enema. Yogic enemas are actually quite common among yogis, which is a practice called basti. But a more subtle practice, and one that I am doing and plan to do more of, is nali, which is abdominal massage using circular movements on the abdominal muscle to stimulate digestion and help cleanse the intestines. So as I take diatomaceous earth, I can feel like my stomach was a little bit sore the other day in the upper tract, and then it started getting sore in the lower tract. And so I was just doing some circular belly massage in order to help all of that expel. Nali can also be practiced non-manually, where you don't use your hand to do any of the massage, but actually you may have seen some yogis do this cool rolling motion with their stomach. That's also another way to detox the body. Another great Kriya purifying practice is Kapalabhati, which is actually a breath work that involves these forceful exhalations and then passively taking in inhales in between the forceful exhalations as a way to purify the respiratory system and invigorate and waken up your mind. Trataka is another practice, and also just a fantastic word. And this is gazing at a fixed point, often a candle or the flame from a fire, to cleanse and strengthen the eyes and improve your concentration. And there are others, some of them a little more violent. And the purpose of these kriyas is to remove impurities from the body and the mind, which can obstruct the flow of prana, of life force. And when your life force is inhibited, it hinders your spiritual progression. So regular Kriya practices, which I'm going to try and do a little bit more of, improve your physical health, your digestion, your respiration, your overall bodily functions. They can help with mental clarity and reduce that mental chatter, increasing your focus and concentration. They help with emotional stability, because I also think there's probably things like parasites that can get removed that affect your emotions. It helps build resilience and calmness. And these things are all enhancing your capacity for deeper states of awareness, which are just going to enhance your spiritual growth. So yes, physical disciplines like this are really important, but the Kriyas also talk about mental discipline being very important, which is cultivating habits that enhance your mental fortitude, like a regular meditation practice, or learning or practicing controlling your negative thoughts and fostering a positive mindset, working on your self-talk, trying to find ways to undo your limiting beliefs and talk yourself into a state where you are actually able to come to the belief in the good, in possibilities, in positivity. This positive mindset is just as important. This mental discipline is considered just as important as the physical discipline. And then lastly, with the Kriyas, it's also really important to control and have discipline when it comes to your emotions. So obviously, mental discipline and physical discipline will help your emotional discipline clearly, because as we know, emotions can bubble up if we aren't moving our body, if we aren't being physically disciplined, if we aren't being mentally disciplined. So emotional discipline looks like developing resilience and the ability to remain calm and balanced in any kind of state. Even if there is an emotional upheaval, it is having control over those big emotions so that they don't overcome you and control you. And of course, there are two more segments to Kriyas and Purification, which are self-study and devotion, such as like reading scriptures or reflecting, journaling, using mantras. And then the surrendering to a higher power, which involves letting go of the illusion of control and trusting in the support of the universe and accepting all outcomes without attachment to anything. It also looks like cultivating humility and gratitude. And this is what I have been doing with my time. And from this, a couple of days ago when I was outside just doing some journaling, I wrote something down in my notebook that I wanted to share with you guys, which is, rather than preaching to those running away, try speaking to those already coming your way. At one point in my life, I was trying to preach to those running away. But in my contemplation recently, in my self-reflecting that I've been able to do, I feel like I'm on this path where I'm just more chilled out and I'm really happy about it. Not too long ago, I had so much worry around instability or stability. It would be so easy for me to be triggered by this time and go, oh no, I'm not producing professionally. Where is any abundance going to come from? And I love that I don't think that anymore. The other day I was listening to the Almost 30 podcast, and the guest said that doubts creep in exactly where your soul needs to be corrected, and how we should be appreciative of our doubts, just the same way that we should be appreciative of our symptoms, like I believe in. Our doubts are here to show us what we came to this world to transform. So I once had this belief that stability wasn't my reality. And now I believe that stability is inevitable. I believe in my stability. I believe in my ability to be stable. I've learned the hard, long, slow way that any reactive tendencies I once had created a frequency that was unable to hold the light. Any thought, word, or action that comes from lack or fear or worry disconnects you from possibilities. This disconnects you from the natural state of miracles. And this podcast was about Kabbalah. And like I mentioned earlier, this has just been something that has come up randomly via various creators over the last few months for me, who've brought up different principles from the Kabbalah that resonate with me a lot. And that is where this doubt piece came from. And another thing that was super poignant from that podcast that I had to listen to 3 times in order to hear and champion and go, heck yes, was about worry, and how worry is actually negative. How worry opens up doors for the negative to enter. How worry actually harms the person or thing you're worrying about. And this is different from concern, like concern or worry in the moment, that if I brought a bulldozer in here and I was trying to maneuver it around, it's different being concerned that it's going to hit something than it is to future think worry and have intrusive thoughts come up that'll make you worry about things or people. I'm talking about worrying about a child who might have a problem, or worrying about a parent who might be sick, or worrying about your spouse or your dog. That worry and that energy is harming them. You must believe that the limitations can be lifted, and at any moment, it can go their way or your way. If your dog is sick, you have to believe at any moment that you can find a solution. You have to believe and find a way to get there, where you truly can believe that there is the possibility that this can go right. Okay, I can see that there is a chance that this is great. And I thought it was really interesting in the podcast episode that he talked about how children who have parents who worry about them a lot instinctively know to distance themselves a little bit in order to protect their soul, because the child innately knows that it is harmful for their spirit to have the energy of worry on them. He speaks about how worrying is a form of evil eye, casting an evil eye. How if you truly care about somebody or something, the best thing you can do for them is to bless them, is to imagine things going their direction, is to imagine things going well for them and believing that it's possible. And this goes for yourself as well. That's why I bring this up, is because a lot of my turmoil and suffering is self-caused by self-worry about myself, my capabilities, my future, my security. But I am realizing now that the opposite of worry, possibility, the energy of certainty, of positive experiences, is the only way that you can have the positive experiences. Putting yourself in an energy of possibility as opposed to worry, an energy of certainty as opposed to fear, that is the only way that you become a vessel, which then, if there is an opportunity there for you, you can catch. Only then can you offer space for the good, the light, and the opportunities to enter your vessel. Only then can these opportunities be held by you. Worry siphons the vessel and eliminates its ability to hold anything. If you can find a way to believe and have certainty that it will work out for you, it is then that black and white, where your energy then becomes open and you can receive whatever you are ready for. Your channel will literally be opened so that whatever is there, whatever light is there for you, will get to you. But like nature, we have to remember, who starts more projects than she can finish, maybe it will take having an open vessel for a long enough period of time to allow the right seeds to come into the space and burrow and take. You cannot become discouraged after a day or a week or a month of having a worry-free attitude without evidence of traction. There is traction, you just might not see it. So you have to remain in this state where you are so worry-free for so long that all of the opportunities that align with your worry-free state have a chance to catch you. If you were to think of your energy as a flow chart, and every opportunity allows you to either react negatively or positively, I think it is that simple. And we, us humans, are complex enough creatures to make every scenario positive or negative. We can make whatever scenario whatever we want it to be. To everything, we can react with certainty or we can react with worry. We can react with doubt or with possibility. And I think a lot of good things that happened to me in my life, like being emailed an HGTV show, being asked to teach after just 2 years of graduating from the program, being invited to speak, or getting an extension of a lot of money to do a really cool project. I think for a lot of my life during these moments, I was energetically an open vessel, at least professionally. I really did not have fear or worry or this complex of instability during these times when everything came my way. And during times where I have had the most worry and fear has been when I've had the least opportunities. The point is, I guess, that there are opportunities and possibilities everywhere and every day, but we have to be literally open to them. And so my job as of late has really just been around honoring my soul, as cheesy as that sounds, and like truly getting 1% closer every day to this full liberation. Like, I already feel so damn free and happy. And it is cool to know that this is just the beginning. I'm just learning all of this now. Imagine what I can do when I really integrate and understand this stuff even better. Because what's so funny is that this information has been here all along. A lot of this stuff that I'm just learning about now is so old. And I could have learned it when I was a kid. I could have learned it 5 years ago. But I think it's cool that there's a reason why I didn't. There's a reason why I'm learning this stuff now. There's a reason why this podcast is hitting your ears today. We are meant for the information we are ready for. You know, there's just so much change and growth and turnover that happens every single day. And being a little more gentle with ourselves, especially during periods of time like I'm going through now, where maybe I'm not producing a lot professionally, where maybe I'm not being called on in those ways that feel validating monetarily or in the public eye. And there's just no more self-bullying or negative self-talk around that because I see no point in worry. I now see that this is all for my better. This is me being productive with my time right now. And it's just cool to know that and actually believe that and not just be saying that because I'm trying to convince myself that. And so if you too are in a period right now of a lot of self-study and in a time where it feels kind of quiet or underproductive in quotation marks, give yourself some grace to know that you are doing a damn good job. And know too that as you grow and as you get better and as you think bigger, you will face new challenges. To refer to the Kabbalah once again, he said that the bigger you think, the more negativity you attract. If you want a big life, you require a bigger vessel, which makes room for both light and dark. Which makes me think of when I share a vulnerable or helpful message or put out a podcast like this, or anytime that I put out something that I truly care about and have a lot of thought behind and pour a lot of my energy and light into, sometimes those are the pieces of content that get the most hateful comments. But maybe when we are on the right path, when we are on the light path, we can conjure darkness. Because for every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. So maybe as I shed some of my light, it's inevitable that some darkness also has to be revealed. Maybe this is just showing me that I am passing my tests, that new challenges are coming up. As I shed more light and interact with more dark, I have an opportunity to react to that negatively or positively. And my challenge right now is reacting positively. Sometimes I fail, sometimes I pass, and I'm trying to, once again, let go of control, let go of expectations, let go of the things that my ego is telling me in order to stay connected to this higher path of certainty and of this knowledge that it doesn't really even matter what I do in this life. I am this Purusha, just having this experience, and I can make it whatever I want it to be. So not to layer even more complexity into this episode, but another thing to me that was related that has intrigued me a lot lately is the word alchemy, or the understanding of alchemy, and understanding it as chemical. When we think of alchemy, at least I think of like ancient practices. I think of magic. And recently, I kind of concluded that alchemy for them, without scientific understanding, what they were really talking about was all chemicals. Alchemy was all chemical. They were really talking about our hormones. Alchemy is changing your body state. And isn't it interesting that when you think of magic and the ability to change someone as if you injected them with something by not even touching their body, that does sound like magic. That is alchemy. And what that really is hormones. It's having control of our internal body chemicals and how our thoughts and our reactions express as different chemical processes, like adrenaline or interferon when you feel exhilarated. How crazy that when you feel tranquility, a substance and chemical very similar to Valium is produced by the body. So it's cool to think that the alchemical, alchemy, ancient knowledge is this essentially hormonal knowledge, science. They back then were playing with how to control the mind and the emotions in order to conjure different states in the body. And that is it's really cool to be doing that still and realizing that that's probably what they were referring to. Like, I don't know, very random side note, but I'm going to summarize this all and close out here. So kind of a random little bit of a segue or side note, but it relates to all these things that I love to talk about. As we know, the state of your body now creates your future body. The alchemy of your body now, the chemicals that you are allowing to surge through you are going to create your state and your body in the future. And so I feel like this is a great place to close this episode. And I wanted to share the coolest quote that I came across this past week that is from this old Indian yogi that I saw on TikTok. And he shared that this quote is an old ancient Ayurvedic understanding or quote that goes around, which is, if you want to know the condition of your thoughts in the past, examine your body now. If you wish to know the condition of your body in the future, examine your thoughts now. It is all how we react. It is the alchemical processes that happen in our body, our feelings, our emotional state. This is the thing to be hacked and controlled. That's biohacking. Personally, I feel like even if you're doing all the things, if you're taking the right steps and supplements and moving your body the right way and doing the lymphatic detox or whatever, if you are energetically or mentally fighting against or not believing in what you are doing, it won't work. How to get anything to work better for you is with belief and achieving control of your emotional state. It is regulation. The biggest hack is being able to self-regulate, which is truly so beautiful because what a great equalizer. Because it means that the LA girl who has a lot of money or access to spas and plunges and facials and drainage massages and a smoothie bar isn't necessarily healthier or better off or closer to her path towards Purusha and her true self than the person who has access to none of that, who has very little money, and who is stuck at home. That person could be more close to Purusha. Because maybe that LA girl is far too in Prakriti, right? She's far too concerned with the material stuff. What does this mean? What will people think? How will it look? If you're doing all the right things, but you are not in control of your emotional state, you're not calm or regulated, and you aren't in a mental state of tranquility, then you haven't achieved the goal of self-care. So that's where I'm going to leave this episode. I've got nothing more to say for now. I hope that you thought this was interesting. As always, please let me know what you think. I am so open to new topics and ideas from you guys, questions, all of the things. I will be speaking with you guys again next week. Who knows what I will come up with then to chat about. But until then, I hope you guys all take care of yourselves and maybe set aside a little bit more time every day to honor your true self, to be a little bit more observant, to have a little bit more care, to maybe even practice yoga through these non-breathwork and movement practices, maybe a little bit more of the niyamas and the kriyas. Anyways, guys, I could keep going, but I will leave you there. Have a beautiful week, and we will chat again soon. Toodaloo. Let me know what you thought of this episode of Every 7 Years over on my Instagram at Sabrina Smelko, Smelko. And if you did enjoy this episode, please consider leaving a rating or review. It's the best way to support a new podcast like mine. Until our paths cross again, take care.